The Tao of Self-Confidence, episode 902. Welcome to the Tao of Self-Confidence, where I share stories of amazing women who have discovered their inner journey to self-confidence. Visit our website at thetaoofselfconfidence.com. Your inner journey to self-confidence awaits. You can now purchase The Tao of Self-Confidence, a guide to moving beyond trauma and awakening the leader within on Amazon, Barnes & Noble's, Walmart, Indigo, and other major book retailers. Get your copy today. Well, hello, friend. Welcome to The Tao of Self-Confidence, where I share stories of amazing women who have discovered their inner journey to self-confidence. I'm your host today, Sheena Yap Chan, and welcome to a brand new season. I can't believe we're at season 10. It's been such a wild journey. Lots of things have happened. And today I'm really excited to have my guest on today because she is a boss. She is the founder of Fintech is Femme, and I'm super excited to have her on the show today. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce you to Nicole Casperson. Nicole, how are you today? Maybe you can fill in a little bit more about yourself to the listeners.
Yeah, hi Sheena. Thank you so much for having me on. I'm so excited to be here and honored because I love your book and I love your work and I love everything that you stand for, especially for the women in the Asian American community. But yeah, I'm a journalist by background, by profession, by trade. I'm also a new author myself. We actually share publishers, so we're author in the family, if you will, I guess, because we're both under Wiley. I have a book coming out. It's called Fintech Feminists. And it's all about how women are playing such an integral role in shaping the future of our economy to be more sustainable, to be more equitable. And you get to meet like 40 to 50 trailblazing women in the space who are bosses in their own right as well. So that's a big project I've worked on this year. I also write through Fintech is Femme. I write a newsletter twice a week that is free. Feel free to check it out at fintechisfemme.co. I host a podcast called Humans of Fintech, and I also host event series in New York and virtual, and I am a speaker, a moderator. I wear many hats. Whatever you want me to do, I can do it, basically. There you have it.
Awesome. Well, thanks for sharing that. And I love the work that you're doing because fintech is so important, especially for women. You know, there's a huge gap still that we face, and it's so important to close that gap so we can have gender parity, not just in the fintech industry, but in all industries. So, and excited for your book to come out. So we'll ask for the pre-order details later on in the interview. But Nicole, what's your cultural background?
Yeah, so I am of mixed Asian descent. So my mother is an immigrant from the Philippines. She landed in LA when she moved from the Philippines, and that's where she met my father, who is of Norwegian descent, but he is from Los Angeles. So he's American. And yeah, that is the mix that I am. And I'm super proud of it. And it's been an incredible journey. You know, being mixed is a very special experience in and of itself, but I wouldn't trade it for the world because of how I'm able to be a bridge between cultures is probably the biggest advantage that I have. And I get to really see and experience things in ways that, you know, so many others don't. So yeah, that's my background, and I'm proud and thrilled to be able to share it. It as many people who listen to this probably can attest to, that takes a lot of self-confidence to get proud sometimes about our backgrounds. And because growing up it wasn't always that way, right? I got all those weird comments like, because I'm mixed, so they'd be like, people would ask me, what am I? Or assume I'm Latina, or just assume my background for me. So those were always annoying and weird. But as you like grow up and get more confident, you're happy to correct people and then happy to let them know why it's important to not bypass my mixed identity and make it kind of like a sidebar conversation or something smaller than it really is, because it's a huge part of who I am.
I love that. And thanks for sharing that. And I know a lot of people out, some of our listeners or guests have been mixed race. They've gone through the same thing, not feeling enough because they come from two different cultures. And it's really a bonus that you belong to two different cultures. I always tell my nephews the same thing. They're Chinese and Lebanese, so they get the best of both worlds. And I always want them to realize that they have two cultures that they can come from, that they can learn about, they, you know, especially when it comes to food and just the traditions and things like that. So I love that you're able to embrace that. And Nicole, what'd be your favorite self-confidence quote?
It does come from Beyonce, and its power is making things happen without asking permission. I Love that quote. I think it looks like she said it when she was just starting her clothing line because, as Beyonce always likes to put it, no one could put her in a box, right? She's not just a musician, she's not just an artist, she's a mogul, a business leader, a fashion icon. I think what I love about that quote is that you can be so many things that you really don't have to put yourself in any kind of box. And it reminds me that when you want something to happen for yourself, you truly are the one. The only way it's going to happen is through you. So you have to be the one to put in the work, to put in the asks, to reach out and network with people to be able to make your dreams possible. I think growing up, especially in America, right? It's like you're kind of told the traditional pathway of grow up, go to school, get a job. As you're working through corporate America, someone is going to see just how wonderful you are. And they're going to be this like ticket for you to get to that job or that CEO role or that thing that you want to accomplish. But I've found that is so not the case. And the only way that you're truly going to make your dreams a reality is to not ask permission from really anyone. It really is the permission from yourself, which is actually the hardest yes to get, is that permission from yourself. So yeah, I try to remember it as often as I can, especially when I want to tell myself no.
Thanks for sharing that. That's a powerful quote, and it's such a great reminder that we don't need permission from anybody. And when we give ourselves permission, we become invincible. And like you mentioned, it is difficult because of the programming that we've been taught all our life. So it takes a lot of unprogramming in the process. So I love that you mentioned that quote, and it's just such a great reminder, not just for me, but for the audience as well. And in your own words, how do you define self-confidence?
Self-confidence is, I know this word gets tossed around a lot these days, so it could make people cringe, but it really is authenticity. Authenticity is much easier said than done. To fully be open to putting yourself out there is, yeah, as someone who's a media personality, if you will, and who literally writes every single week, putting her own thoughts and opinions out there, I know how hard authenticity truly is, especially when it's kind of your job to be as authentic as possible. But that's really how I define that self-confidence. I also think it's like giving yourself a lot of grace. The reality is that we're all doing literally so many things and we're all trying so hard to make all of our dreams happen and all of the causes that we're so passionate about move forward, but that stuff takes time, right? Like success takes time. It's not linear. Even women like Beyonce, right, have had their own zigs and zags and turns. So I think that's a huge part of the authenticity piece of it, is that it's never going to be like rainbows and butterflies all the time. It's really important to like give yourself a ton of grace and to do whatever you can to like live in every single moment and take it day by day, because this world is so crazy and so many things are happening that we just like, you let the days bypass you and sometimes you miss the goodness of what's happening. I know it happens to me all the time. I'm giving myself this advice in real time as we record this. But yeah.
Thanks for sharing that great definition. And yes, authenticity is important as much as we, hear it so many times. It's important to repeat it so that we know that being authentic is okay, meaning the good, bad, and the ugly. So I love that you mentioned that. And Nicole, what was your life like before you discovered self-confidence?
I think it was a life of waiting, right? Like waiting for someone to see my value, waiting for that editor to say, you know what, Nicole, your writing is so good. You deserve your own column, right? For some background and for some context, I was a traditional finance reporter, an editor at a number of different trade publications. And then at the end of 2021, I left. I was at a magazine and print publication called Investment News at the time, covering financial advice and wealth management for the financial advisor and financial planning and wealth management industry. So I remember thinking to myself, I was still in my 20s at the time, and I was trying to decide, okay, am I going to continue on this journey, or I'm going to go more entrepreneurial? Am I going to do what, a lot of journalists are doing today, which is leaving their publications to go and start their own media companies so that they can have their own voice and have that entrepreneurial autonomy. and create a bigger impact and share their, biases and editorial views. I thought to myself, because I was terrified to make the decision because of stability and salary and entrepreneurship scary and putting yourself out there scary, being authentic is scary. But I told myself, how long am I willing to wait? I was 26 at the time. Am I going to wait till I'm 30 for an editor to say, you know what, Nicole, you're good enough. You should write your own newsletter or your own podcast, or host your own podcast, or have your own show? Well, with the technological advances today, I could just do that now and not wait for some old white guy to tell me that I'm good enough. Because who knows when that guy's ever going to think I'm good enough? Is it going to be 30? Am I going to spend the rest of my 30s waiting for someone to find me impressive enough to reach for the things that I want? That's how I made that decision. And so I thought, you know what? There's like no time like the present. So that I think is something that helps me when it comes to confidence and self-confidence, is thinking a lot about, hey, the time on our earth is very precious, right? You only have so much to give. So be very intentional with how you want to use that time. If you want to use it like just making yourself rich or making someone else richer, and that's fine and fulfilling to you, then great. If that's your authenticity, awesome. For me, it was really more about, I see a really important problem here, which in newsrooms was my voice isn't being valued. I'm the only woman and Asian and person of color in these spaces most of the time. And I can see the direct impact that has on not only the industries I cover, because the voices are largely dominated by older white men, but also the consumer that ends up using the products of the industry leaders that I'm writing for. So there was this really important ripple effect that I noticed. And I thought, I need a lot more young women like myself to see that, hey, if we put our voices out there, this would be another quote I would add to the Beyonce quote, which is from Maya Angelou. When a woman stands up for herself without realizing it and possibly without claiming it, she stands up for all women. So I realized by standing up for myself, it really is more than just me. It's the ripple effect that causes. And so that having that transition in my life from, okay, you know what? I was in this corporate role. I'm going to not wait for someone to give me my turn. I'm going to take my turn now. Realizing the ripple effect of when I was brave enough, right, to take a risk, to put myself out there. I had some folks that followed my work as a journalist into being an entrepreneur and writing my own newsletter be like, it felt like you just like exploded onto the seed. And that's exactly what I did. I shed any kind of old messaging I told myself and said, if I'm going to rewrite the narrative for women, I have to do it for myself first. And when I do it for myself, my audience, and step into that authenticity, it's actually a very important business strategy, because then women see themselves in me and connect with me. And that's how I grow my audience. It's how I grow, business. It's how I create more and more work for myself. So I think that's like a lot of how my life has changed, is that I actually have way more people connecting with me in a way I never experienced before. And that's new to me, especially as like someone who was a former young person in school as a mixed kid who really didn't belong anywhere. And now I've created a space where not only I belong, but thousands and thousands of women see themselves belonging. So that's like the life change, which has been such a ride.
I love it. And I love that you mentioned, like, especially when it comes to representation, we crave for it. People complain there's not enough representation. And it really, if we want it, it has to start with ourselves, building those platforms, showing them what's possible. And, you're like, I just write a newsletter 2 times a week, but people don't even realize you have like 50,000 people who read your newsletter, which is amazing. And all because of that decision that you made that you're going to do something for yourself and you want to be that representation. And because you made that decision, took that risk, what's your life been like now?
Oh man, madness in great ways, right? I never have to ask someone if I can take a day off except for myself. I be careful what you wish for. I leaned into that Beyonce quote very heavy because now the only permission I have to ask truly is myself as the boss of my own company. So my life is very different in that I honestly I get to build way more word of this podcast authentic relationships with the people that I work with, right? The women that I interview. There's no more of this like veil of, okay, well, I work for someone else. I have to follow their rules, their editorial guidelines. Now that it's me and every single point and intentionality around Fintech is Femme is through my lens, me and, my co-founder, who's also my life partner, who's also a mixed Asian person, and he's amazing. So kudos to him. But the life change really is that I get to connect with people in a way that I never thought was possible. And the fact that I get to do it through my own version of storytelling and completely carve my own lane is it's one of those things that you really never think you could possibly do until you just start giving yourself that permission to do it. So now while being an entrepreneur is like complete chaos pretty much majority of the time, but when life isn't chaos, right? At least now I am my own boss. I make my own decisions. I go on vacation when I need to. I stop when I'm burnt out when I need to, as much as possible. And I think that that's kind of the most important part is also the level of community that I'm able to build. When you put yourself out there, even if it's a newsletter, even if it's a LinkedIn post, right? The door that you're opening for so many others to follow in your footsteps is, I think, just like more fulfilling than any paycheck. Any paychecks are great. Those should keep coming. But like, you know what I mean? It's just there's something to the communal element of it that I think as especially as Asian women, we didn't have so much growing up that I wouldn't trade for anything because because now I'm not just fueling my confidence, I'm fueling other people's confidence. And then that fuels my confidence right back. So we're just in this like self confidence wheel where we all get to not only put confidence into each other's bodies and feelings and support, but also funding, right? To fund each other, to give each other jobs, to support each other just without any hesitation. To create that kind of network is huge and completely invaluable. So that's how life has changed. Is a ton of connection with like incredible women, which just fuels my self-confidence every day.
Thanks for sharing that. And I love what you mentioned. And, to the woman who's listening to your episode, she may be in her own journey to self-confidence. What'd be that one tip you would give to her?
I would say community, really. I think that the journey of self-confidence doesn't need to be such an isolating journey, right? I mean, I think that's the beauty of the book you've written with the Tao of Self-Confidence, the community that you're building as well, Gina. I think it's such a beautiful thing to see so many women building our own communities and our own networks because the journey to self-confidence, just like anything, can't be done in a silo. You'll go like totally crazy. There's like elements of it that you have to do alone, right? To kind of do the inner work with yourself, that retrospection. But I think it's so important to lean on a supportive community, especially of women that are like-minded and going through what you're going through. And, whether that's if you're in fintech and you want to be in a fintech community or you're like what I've built of other women building in the space. So you can lean on that and drive that confidence. Or you're an Asian American woman, and you want to be a part of Sheena's world. I think there's more than enough options in space and places to go. So that I think, is definitely a huge piece of advice is like surround yourself with people that are inspiring and want to push their self-confidence, which inherently pushes yours too, which is so invaluable.
I love that piece of advice, and it's so important. As women, we have to learn to work together to move forward and, close the gaps that we still face today. So thanks for sharing that great tip. And if our listeners wanted to get to know a little bit more about you, subscribe to your newsletter, or pre-order your book, is there any links or social media profiles we can connect with?
Yeah, feel free to check out my website. It is fintechisfemme.co, no M. So I'm currently building out a little bit more of the website so that folks can pre-order the book there. You can definitely sign up for the newsletter there. So updates to come, but feel free to check it out and save it. But for now, my book is available for pre-order on Amazon, Barnes and Noble. Yeah, my newsletter is free. And social media wise, LinkedIn is where I spend most of my time, but feel free. You can check me out, just Nicole Casperson, or you could follow Fintech is Femme on Instagram, which is the other place I spend some time.
Thanks for sharing that. And to our listeners, if you want to connect with Nicole, you can also head on over to thetaoofselfconfidence.com and search for Nicole's name. Her show notes will pop up along with everything else that we talked about. And I just really want to thank Nicole today for taking the time to share her journey and super excited for her book to come out. So make sure you pre-order that. And Nicole, thank you again for being on the show.
Thank you so much, Sheena, for having me. Excited to be here. And yeah, excited to connect with some of the women that are listeners.
Not a problem. It was such an honor having you on the show. And to our listeners, be on the lookout for another new episode of another amazing woman's journey to self-confidence, and we'll talk to you soon. Bye for now. Thank you for tuning in to another amazing episode of The Tao of Self-Confidence. You can order your copy of Asian Women Who Boss Up book by visiting our website at thetaoofselfconfidence.com. Your inner journey to self-confidence awaits.